Windows Community Toolkit with Michael Hawker.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host. And make sure to check out www.azuredevops.show for past episodes and show notes. And the goal of this podcast is to empower you and your teams with the information that you need to move fast and deliver consistent quality using the .NET ecosystem, wherever that takes us, and be really good at it and run your software systems with confidence in Azure. And for those of you running .NET and Azure user groups, I've been doing a lot of online video presentations. I just spoke for a group in Cleveland this past week. And if you run one of these user groups, I'd love to give a presentation for you. Also on the podcast, our sponsor is my company, ClearMeasure. We're a software architecture company that empowers .NET teams to be self-sufficient and able to deliver world-class results. And so if we can help, get in touch. And if you are a .NET developer and would like a path to become an architect, we are hiring. Just apply on the website, clearmeasure.com. 4 positions are open at the time of this recording. Michael A. Hawker, a.k.a. the XAML Llama, is a senior software engineer for the Partner Analytics and Essential Experiences, or the PAX team at Microsoft. And PAX focuses on driving the ISV ecosystem through technical engagement with partners and industry, as well as providing essential first-party experiences. Michael's the maintainer of the Windows Community Toolkit, and prior to that, App Ninja. Previously, he's worked on Windows Protocols, Message Analyzer, and Network Monitor. And he's also the creator of XAML Studio, a Microsoft Garage project. So, Michael, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Thanks, Jeffrey. Really great pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's so many exciting things that just recently before recording came out and were announced at the .NET Conf, and you know, your session was one of those. And I want to dive into Windows Community Toolkit, but for the folks who miss a session or are kind of meeting you for the first time, tell us a little bit about your background and how you landed in this role. Working on what you're currently doing.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I've been at Microsoft for over a decade now, so I've definitely lots of stories. But I really found my home here in the PAX team, just working with our partners and our developers, and really trying to find great solutions for them. And that's how I found the Windows Community Toolkit. I was like, you know, we're doing all this work. We should just be putting it out in the open and really improving the ecosystem for everyone. And so that's really what I just have a passion for doing, is just trying to help people out and putting these things out in the open source and working with the community to come up with some great ideas and help them build great components that can be used by tens and thousands of developers. If not more. It's hard to gauge our size of our audience sometimes, especially with any individual component. Right. But it's really quite something to see the work that the community does and that we can do with the community, and how that gets used to build great applications and experiences on our platform. So I'm really excited about that. And it's just something that brings me to work every day, and I always enjoy doing. So that's kind of how I ended up here, and I just kind of started doing it and started engaging with folks, and really enjoyed doing that work, and started working on the toolkit for that stuff. And then they're like, hey, you know, you wanna maintain it? And I'm like, sure, let's go figure that out. So I've really been trying to really put a lot of effort in the toolkit and make sure that we can give it a future that it deserves, because so many developers rely on it. So it's a really important piece of technology that I'm really excited to see where we can bring it in the future. And that was a lot of what we were talking about .NET Conf, with a lot what we were doing there with our new MVVM library. And so that's what we were talking about there.
Nice. Yeah, so many interesting things coming out of .NET Conf, and of course for people paying attention, there was very little surprise because so many things are out in the open. But for people who are just doing their work and then they go, oh, what's Microsoft coming? .NET 5. Wait a minute, we're doing Windows apps again in .NET 5. With WinForms and WPF. Before we get into the toolkit, what is the strategy? What is the vision? Because it seems like, wow, hey, there's a lot of renewed investment now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the exciting thing with .NET 5 is that it's trying to bring everything together, and it's kind of ended up being, I think, a bigger project and task than anyone realizes. And so there's still some efforts, I think, that are spilling into .NET 6. From my understanding, I mean, Microsoft's such a big company. I think people forget to look at that we all don't have introspection into what all the different arms of the company are doing and all the different technologies that are involved. But it is really exciting to see all the investments being done in the platforms and all these different groups trying to come together on .NET and what they can do there in that space. And so, that's part of why we're investing in some more .NET standard-based stuff in the Windows Community Toolkit, because it's so important, not just for our traditional kind of UWP developers that we've targeted in the past with our technology, but also, all the WinForms and WPF and other .NET developers. And so if we can bring more to them as we kind of align on this one .NET vision, then that just helps, everyone on the platform, but also help people kind of get more familiar with the toolkit and what we provide in it and the solutions that we might have, and also help them transition if they want to start using the modern UI stack with WinUI 3 that's coming in the future, and things like Project Reunion. Those are all things that are on our mind now in the Windows Community Toolkit, and how we can provide solutions on top of those future endeavors as well.
Well, you're going to have to define Project Reunion for us.
Yeah, it's definitely a big new thing. They have their own GitHub out there. It's hard to quantify succinctly. I think in some ways it's still a lot of stuff that's been more recently unfolding and kind of getting put together and planned and figuring out what the actual end result is. But the overarching vision of Project Reunion is to try and really unify these two different camps of developers that we've had in the past, where you've had kind of the traditional Win32 desktop developer doing things across the whole desktop environment, having access to the whole file system, all those sorts of ways that development has been done in the past. And then you've kind of had the new modern stack on top of Windows RT, where you can now target any Windows 10 device, so you can run your applications on Xbox or HoloLens, but you're kind of within that restricted API model, which is really a benefit to your users because it helps you with privacy and security and battery life and has a lot of great benefits there. But for the traditional desktop development is this restriction that they're not really used to of having to go through the user giving them consent to do anything that they want to do on the machine. And so I think for other developers that might be coming from the phone model, like they're very comfortable with that. And so if they're building an app on Windows, like use the UWP modern stuff there and take advantage of that sandbox for the benefit of your own users. But there's been kind of this split in those two camps of like, how do we get to have a unified story for these developers in these two different sets of worlds. And so Project Reunion is trying to bridge that gap and have a more common set of APIs to bridge those gaps that can work in both places, at least from my understanding. There's a lot of complexities there that I'm still trying to learn myself. And that's hard when it's a very technical sort of thing going on. It's how do you kind of convey that to the community and the developer environment when it's hard to comprehend as an engineer myself, right? Like it's definitely a challenging problem. But there's a lot of good talks. The WinUI team just did about a half an hour session earlier this week. I think it was the app developer community chat or something. I should find a link for you to put in the the references later, but they kind of described a little bit more about these details and those plans for the future and how this all fits together. Probably a little bit better than I can here.
A lot there. So the Windows Community Toolkit, for people who aren't familiar with it, or maybe they haven't done a Windows app in a while, what is it?
Great. Yeah. So the Windows Community Toolkit is really a set of helpers and controls that are here to help Windows developers. And so it's mostly focused on the more modern Windows RT stack, so UWP, and controls for that. But we have kind of more recently branched out into the .NET standard space. And so we do have a few libraries, such as our upcoming MVVM library that I mentioned earlier, as well as a high performance package and some just general helpers as well for any .NET developer. So regardless of where you're doing, even if you're not doing development on Windows, there might be some interesting stuff there as well. And so that's something that we're trying to exploring also because of Project Reunion and this plan in the future to bring in the WPF and WinForms developers and other folks that are doing, .NET desktop development. We want to make sure that we start having a lot of stuff of value for them as well, and showing them, hey, if you do plan at some point to move to the modern WinUI UI stack that we'll be building on top of in the future, here's an entry point and a gateway to learning more about what we have to offer.
Okay. And the .NET standard packages, so any application that you can just pull in a library, what types of things are being put into that?
So we target .NET Standard 2, so that has the most broadest reach right now. That reaches Unity developers, it reaches Blazor developers, it reaches Xamarin developers, it reaches, of course, Windows developers doing .NET, either on .NET Framework or the new .NET Core, and now .NET 5, which is supposed to unify everything together. And so it really kind of works anywhere. So anywhere you're doing .NET development, you can use our .NET standard libraries. So we have 3 of them. We have just the base Microsoft Toolkit one, which is just a few little helpers here and there. There's not as much in that package at the moment. And then the 2 bigger ones, of course, are the MVVM and then the high performance one. The high performance was actually driven by one of our community members and is really a set of APIs and helpers for really getting every instruction down. This community member, Sergio Pedri, has really optimized the output of these functions that you're using are creating the minimal amount of executions on your CPU. It's really quite something to see. I have to admit, I don't understand half of what he's doing and how he's doing it. I'm a UI guy. I think of all the UI controls and the experiences, and I can build the UI control and figure out how to do everything in XAML. That's why they call me the XAML Llama. But the inner details of .NET and all those optimizations and everything is a bit beyond me, but it's really been exciting to see what he's been doing in that space, and other developers that are noticing that and starting to pick up on that, and then suggesting ideas or floating problems that they're having that he's able to find solutions for and put in there. So it's grown from like a couple of random little things he was thinking of, and I think he's doubled the size of the number of APIs, if not tripled, that are going to be in there in the next release coming up. So
okay, so with .NET Standard, then people have heard the message. Okay, you can go anywhere, even run it on Linux, Mac, in phones. So it can't be just a lot of UI controls because some of them wouldn't run. So are there a lot of people already adopting this on non-Windows applications?
That's a great question. So yeah, all of our .NET standard stuff is not UI focused. I mean, MVVM itself as a pattern is meant for building UI applications and developers, but like the core bits that are in there are very much more how you structure your data and your models to build your application on top of. But we do see a lot of folks in the community. So we started this MVVM project back in April. It's really driven by our community because another library called MVVM Lite is no longer being maintained. And so we actually reached out to that owner, Laurent Bognon, to work with him and figure out, how we could kind of be the spiritual successor and help his users come forward to our new library. And we've seen such interest, and we probably more so than most other kind of development efforts we've seen in the toolkit before. And so we already have developers from Blazor and WPF and Uno to put these things together and play with it and build samples or try things out in their own applications. And so that's been really exciting to see. Like, even before we've shipped our final bits, we've gotten so much feedback and input because people have been trying it and seeing what works and what doesn't, or where there's gaps. And so we've already iterated a number of times and made some changes based on all that feedback and seen what works and where we might still have gaps across all these different platforms. And so it's something that we're still driving and looking to improve before release, or look at how we can also, work back with some of those platforms that are open source and hopefully, put better just base support for not only our library, but any MVVM library in there as well.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So with Windows apps, there was Click Once and MSI packages. In .NET 5 and going forward, what is the current modern installer or deployment package format?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think with most technologies, and including .NET, there's always a lot of different answers to the question, right? Depending on your scenario and what you're trying to do, there's different options available. And, I think .NET 5 continues that. They have, from my understanding, some of the click to run packages and the single binary executable options. And so if you're doing, the WPF or WinForms, you have those options as well. I'm more familiar with where the UWP and the WinRT space has been, because we've had our own packaging, which was AppX, and now MSIX is the evolution of that. And so that's the technology I'm a little bit more familiar with, but that's also, continuing forward and kind of trying to be the replacement for the old MSI packages and providing extra benefits so that, once you install it, it comes off cleanly, right? Like, that's always the challenge, is like when you uninstall that, it doesn't leave anything behind. And that's what MSIX is really trying to solve, is just having this encapsulated package that's easy to get on a box and take off a box as well. And so I think, if you're having an application that you want to ship and have that kind of clean and up install scenario and auto updating is kind of included in that technology. Like MSIX is really nice. If you're in a more enterprise or desktop scenario, having that kind of just click to run experience can be really easy as well. So I think it really just kind of boils down, as always, of what is your core scenario, who are your core users, how are you trying to reach them, and what is that scenario and that experience that you want them to have, and how is that going to work for you. And there's a lot of different options there. Like there's the Microsoft Store as well, right? Like if you're trying to reach consumers or trying to sell it, like just having that marketplace where you as a developer can just upload the package and don't have to worry about hosting or credit card processing systems and all that stuff. Like it's just all there, and you just get it from using the store. So I think there's a lot of different advantages, and to each of the different systems, it all boils down to, as a developer, as a company that's building software, what is it that makes sense for what you do? Or, you might already have an existing infrastructure of how you're reaching your customers and selling products to them. And so, that other, shipping in the store, using the other package format might not make as much sense compared to others. Okay. There's actually a great article one of our community members has done. He's actually another fellow Microsoft employee, but he did an article about how the store, had kind of helped him get started in the app development.
Many thanks to our podcast sponsor, ClearMeasure. ClearMeasure is a software architecture company that empowers clients' development teams to be self-sufficient, moving fast, delivering quality, and running their systems with confidence. Whether starting a new project or developing new technologies or techniques, ClearMeasure sets up your team to deliver world-class results. Learn more at www.clearmeasure.com. ClearMeasure, empowering software delivery.
Okay, so deploying is there are things that are moving, but backing up from there, What's the state of full application testing with these, with the different UI controls and the UI? What are the libraries that you guys are using that tend to work to be able to, type in text boxes, click on buttons, do all the interaction, just so that we're not left with all manual testing?
Right. That's actually a great question. If you'd asked me a year ago, I would have been stumped, because it has definitely been a challenge, especially in the Windows Community Toolkit, about how we do all this testing. And that's actually been one of the investments we've been making in these last few months for our upcoming release, is to really kind of address a lot of our technical debt. And part of that was, how do we better test our controls and components within the toolkit? Because, we'd have all these cases where bugs would crop up because we broke something or some scenario that used to work before. And so, of course, enabling unit tests in our CI was the first obvious step, and that helped to already catch a lot of issues or reassert a lot of problems that we used to have, and just make it, a no-brainer that, okay, if we can add a simple unit test, we can do that. And then that just gives us this minimum bar to make sure we're not going backwards for any of these scenarios. But then, of course, the next step is, how do we actually test the UI components, because UI controls are so pivotal to a lot of what we do, and that's something we're still working out. But we have adapted the system that the actual platform uses in the Windows UI group. And so we've been looking at how their infrastructure works and adopting that for the toolkit. And so one of the great advantages of that will be too, is that if we have components in the toolkit, which we've seen in the past move into the platform, and we write tests for those controls now, if the Windows UI team adopts those and builds a similar enough component, they should just be able to kind of re-leverage some of our tests or adapt them a lot more easily in that transfer process. So that's kind of an exciting future that we're looking towards. And so we're using their kind of automation framework, which is has a couple of different adapters, and that's stuff that we actually helped them kind of componentize better, so we could leverage within the toolkit. I'm still learning a lot of that technology itself, so I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with all the technical names of what's actually driving things underneath. But that's what we're looking at, and we're hoping to make it easy enough that the community members that are contributing controls to the toolkit will have an approachable way and of course set of examples that they can use to write tests for their own components as they contribute to the toolkit. And so I'm planning probably later this morning, after we talk on my live stream that I do developer live streams about the toolkit and all the work that I do, because I'm doing it in the open anyway. I figured I should stream it. And I'm going to be looking at some of that test infrastructure and seeing how we can move that forward and make it even easier to group things together and make it easy for developers to contribute and write a test for, because there's some kind of idiosyncrasies right now and how things are split up. And I want to see if I can kind of have it so there's just a folder that has your test and your UI together in one spot, so that developers just know here's what I need to do. Because that's the thing. If you can make it easier for your community to write tests, then they're actually going to be able to do that. If it's this complicated process where they have to read a 5-page manual to understand how to write a test, it's not going to happen. And it's going to be, it's not something you can ask of your community to do. If you have a set of examples and just say, hey, copy paste this, tweak it a little bit, even if it's just, clicking on a couple of buttons here and there, just making sure it does some of the basic functionality, at least it's your minimum bar. Someone else that's, really loves testing and is excited about it, they can go in, they can come and add on top of that. But at least if you have that baseline, it's a starting point for someone else to build on top of if you're not confident or comfortable enough doing it yourself. And I think that's the great thing we see in the community, is like people building on top of each other's work in the open source. Like that's some of the power of it. Is it's amazing to see so many people from different backgrounds coming together to just build stuff that so many other developers can benefit from. Okay.
And what's the name of that testing framework? I mean, if you're using it in GitHub, then I'm assuming that it's openly accessible to anybody that wants to use it.
Yeah, exactly. It just ships as a NuGet package. But yeah, I'd have to go actually look up the name if you want the specifics.
Okay.
So.
Well, it sounds like, and I remember over a decade ago, there was this library called White that was really popular for WinForms control testing. But that space hasn't been populated very heavily with testing options that can actually pull up a window, get a handle on a screen or a part of the screen, a particular control, and whereas in the web space, Selenium kind of dominates.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's using Selenium.
And for the modern Windows app equivalent to that, there's the WinApp driver, which I think uses some of those similar control mechanisms. And so that is something that we've I've worked on a little bit in the past for some other kind of partner work that I've done. But yeah, I know we're not using WinApp driver in this space. It's something a little bit more direct. I'm actually just looking through the PR to see if I can see where the project file is now. There's definitely a lot of options. It's definitely something I'm still learning a lot about myself, just because it's something that has been a gap in the toolkit, and it's something that I know we need to address, and we're kind of finally getting there.
Right.
But yeah, it's going to take some time. But yeah, I don't know what the actual name of the framework is offhand.
Okay,
so.
we'll find it and put it in a link to it in the show notes. But yeah, if it's used in your GitHub project, then even if it's just a custom namespace of sorts, it's accessible in some way. So, well, with the Windows Community Toolkit, but then also just the applications and the products internally. Are there any learning moments that the teams that you work with have found when it comes to having a high productive DevOps environment when working on a Windows application?
That's another interesting question too. DevOps has certainly been a weakness of my own as well. Like I said, I'm the UI component guy, but I've definitely been learning a lot more, especially over the last couple of weeks with all the different changes, especially with .NET 5 coming in and other work that we've been doing to split up our massive controls package into kind of more consumable bits, which has been another priority of our upcoming release. I've definitely had to flex my DevOps muscle a little bit more. And so I've been definitely learning a little bit more about that space. But yeah, it's been super critical to what we do in the toolkit. Is like every PR that goes up, it has an automated build that kicks off. It runs all the unit tests now, and will eventually run all of our UI component tests. We have a smoke test now that actually takes the final NuGet packages and tries to consume them, so that we kind of have a litmus test of can a developer actually include this in their project without hitting problems, which actually caught an issue that we had a few weeks ago, and that required some more MS build ninjutsu to resolve in the end. But it's definitely been really critical just to catch things early. We have style cop running so that we try and have some consistency to our code base. And so, it catches those issues right away and helps us gate check and not just check in code that doesn't kind of conform to the standards we're trying to apply to the project. So all those different things are really kind of beneficial to the project and really just help at least us maintain some minimum quality gates there. And now it's easy for us to say, okay, just add your unit tests to this, and then we'll be good to go with this feature. And they can add the unit test. And even if they're not quite understanding how everything works on their own machine, if they've copied the patterns, it can run in the CI and give us the results right away. Or we'll know if they've tweaked some piece of code that's on some hot path for some key scenario. As long as we have a test that covers it, we know that that hasn't broken as well. And so we haven't. I'm trying to think if we've seen cases of that helping. I know it would have helped in the past, because we've certainly had that problem in the past before we started running them in the CI. But yeah, that's been a big focus of our release and the work that we've been doing the last few months in the toolkit, is to really make that really a critical part of what we're doing and really shore up a lot of the work that our CI is doing for us. And right now, even we just switched to the Azure DevOps artifacts. And so now any PR that's going up is actually getting a private NuGet package bundled and put in one of those feeds. So if you're some other developer that wants to try one of the new features that a community member is building in the Windows Community Toolkit, before it even gets in, you can download that NuGet package, easily consume it, within your project. You actually don't even have to download it. You can just point to the feed and upgrade it through Visual Studio. But try out that feature before it's even put in the toolkit. Give feedback and help us with these PR reviews. You don't have to be writing code and fixing bugs or contributing a new feature to contribute to an open source project. You can just come try the new things that people are building and give feedback, and that's really, really valuable for us. If we see 2 or 3 community members trying out a new feature and giving us feedback on it, that's infinitely valuable to us than us spending time to really minutely review every detail. If we know that 3 different people have used it in 3 different ways, right away we know that this has value, or we've gotten valuable feedback to that community member who's contributing something that we can work with them to help resolve those issues and really kind of focus on the feature than having to dig into trying to understand exactly how this is going to be used by people and guess how they want to use it, right? I don't build apps every day. I'm working on a toolkit. I've built some apps in the past, but really kind of, with the breadth of everything that happens in the toolkit, trying to understand exactly how every feature is going to be used is kind of an impossible task for me, right? I forget half of what's in the toolkit. We have so many different things in the toolkit. And so, having other people that are actively using the toolkit and building things with it, giving this feedback is such a valuable resource. And so that's a great way to jump in and get started on contributing to an open source project, is just trying things out and giving feedback.
Okay, awesome. And over the years, there's been a lot of different UI paradigms, and you spend so much of your time in the user interface. There's been the old MDM, multiple document management, and then do we have a toolbar? Do we have a side navigation pane? And now with so many of the new the WinUI style apps in Windows, like Calculator and even the settings application, it's a totally different style of UI. Where are we going now? As more and more people come back to Windows development, but just native installed applications in general, what is the state of the art when it comes to UI layout?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know you had Ryan Demopoulos from the Windows UI team on your show earlier as well. And I think in his presentations, he kind of sums it up really well. And like you mentioned, there's the MFC of the past in like the 90s. Then we had WinForms, and then we had WPF. And at the time, each of these was like the latest and greatest way to build UI on the platform. And then we introduced kind of the UWP model with the modern applications and the modern XAML and bringing in great things like Xbind into that to really get some performance out of how you bind your data to your UI model. And that's where the Windows UI 3 is coming in, is kind of the next step in that phase. And with Project Reunion, trying to bring that modern UI development platform to everyone, not just people that are trying to write apps across all of Windows 10 devices in the sandbox, but those building desktop enterprise apps that want access to the entire box as well. And so I think that's really exciting. We've been working closely with the Windows UI team to make sure that the Windows Community Toolkit and all the components that we've been building on top of UWP will also transition to Windows UI 3 as well. And so we actually have previews for WinUI 3. They actually just dropped their preview 3 the other day. And so we have bits now for the toolkit that work on top of that we've shipped as well. And so we actually have an issue on our repo that tells you how to get started with their preview. So if you're a Win32 desktop developer that wants to learn about the modern UI framework that's coming in WinUI 3, that this is a great way to get started. And you have the toolkit there with all of our components and helpers to give you those building blocks to get started as well. So we'll definitely provide a link to that and how you can get started there as well. Okay,
awesome. And for the people whose interest we piqued and they're maybe getting back into Windows development, or people who are going deeper, what do you recommend people do next? How should they get started, or what any resources to point them to?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I know there's a lot of great resources out there for .NET in general, like their new tutorial on the docs.microsoft.com has like interactive samples and stuff. So if you're interested in C# or .NET in general, they have a lot of great resources. Of course, for application development, there's a lot of great tutorial series and documents either for the traditional kind of desktop development with WinForms and WPF on .NET 5, or of course you have the UWP and WinUI 3 stuff for the modern UX stack. And so that's something that I'm trying to focus on and looking at in the future for 2021 is, how do we, especially for, the toolkit, or rather not just for the toolkit, but for everyone, like how do we, have better resources for, Windows developers looking for the modern UI stack. And so I did a little kind of snippet on one of my streams about, intro to XAML and kind of showcased a little bit of my own little app called XAML Studio, which you can just download within the store and kind of play with things. It kind of expects that you know a lot about XAML already because there's not a lot of IntelliSense built in or anything like that. And of course, in the end, you use Visual Studio and that's your main development environment. But it's a great way if you just want to take a snippet from the web, paste it in there and see what it does. You can do that. It's really about rapid prototyping and evolving an idea or just trying things out. And so there's definitely a lot of great resources out there to help with Windows developers. And we'll definitely try and grab some of those links to the different resources I mentioned. But it's really just about, downloading a sample, trying something out, seeing how it works and tinkering. I think, hands-on exploration. I mean, everyone learns a little bit differently, but I feel like by actually trying to run something or build something is kind of the best way to start getting your feet wet and really digging in and understanding what's going, because then you can just, take a little bit of code, tweak it, see what happens, right? It either doesn't work or it does something. Right. And that's the excitement you get and the exhilaration of development. I mean, that's what drives me and what gets me excited is just seeing, the code that you type turn into something that appears on the screen. I mean, that's always, I think, the greatest thrill as an application developer is just seeing those things become reality.
Right. Awesome. Hey, there's a lot of great information and so much to dig into. I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing what's new with Windows apps and the Windows Community Toolkit. Thanks a lot, Michael.
I can't believe it's already over. I mean, I think that the key learning that I've learned just from helping our community members is, if you're doing Windows development and you're having a problem or seeing an issue or think that you want to build something, just check the Windows Community Toolkit first. We have a lot of great solutions in there. The majority of my answers are hey, we already have a solution to this in the toolkit. So I mean, sometimes myself, I forget, I should look in the toolkit. Oh, yeah, we already have this. It's
right. Awesome.
But yes, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.